And
14 people so far.
we're doing okay. All right. So welcome everybody. Dr. Bill Clearfield again here. Our Tuesday night webinar. Tonight we have John Casey, who's the CEO of
Nutritional Therapeutics.
Yeah, it's
I'm also
covered
the
up.
founder.
Yeah, it's covered up there. So Nutritional Therapeutics. So Dr. Casey is going to talk about improving intermembrane mitochondrial membrane potential. Dr. Casey, thank you for being with us. If you can just give us a little bio and background and take it away. And tonight, unfortunately, Dr. Casey doesn't have control over his slides. I do, so there'll be a little bit of a delay, but we'll be fine. So
Okay.
take it away.
My claim to fame is I am the Chief Executive Officer here at Nutritional Therapeutics. We're 30 years old this year. We're located in Islandia, New York. That's out in Suffolk County, just a little bit west of the Hamptons, if that gives you a sense of it. My contact information is on the bottom left of this screen here. There's a lot to this science. What we have done is we've really, for the first time, provided an exogenous source of material, food extracts, that will have a nutritional effect on the membrane lipid bilayers, the outer covering of the cells and the organelles, the bilipid membrane. While we have done a lot of studies, we have 15 clinical studies, we have about 55 peer-reviewed published papers. Due to the FTC restrictions, really, we concentrate on advertising, promoting three functions. One is that we improve the intermembrane mitochondrial membrane potential, and I'm going to go, and my presentation today will go through the research for these main points. We have reduced fatigue with statistical significance at every opportunity where we've measured them, and that's been in all of our studies. And that is, as you all know, the most frequent complaint you get from patients. And this really has a dramatic effect on optimizing the reduction of fatigue. And it improves the bioavailability of synergistic nutrients. In other words, it will, when with the multi-nutrient formula, that formula, notwithstanding NT factor, will work better. So NT factor as an ingredient is both supportive of the nutrients it is with and supportive of its, and provides an interesting degree of nutritional support itself. So with that, if you go to the next screen, please. This first part of the screen tells you what membrane lipid replacement is. But first, membrane lipid replacement is how our material is referred to in the scientific literature. So when we're in journals that we're not allowed to state the name of a product, and even where we are, it's frequently referred to as membrane lipid replacement. That is and the acronym is MLR. That is essentially the name of this therapy that we're going to show you today. And it's the use of natural protected membrane lipid supplements to safely replace oxidized lipids in cell membranes and organelle membranes as well, in order to restore membrane function and decrease various symptoms and improve health. If you could click, please. Membrane injury occurs in all chronic and acute medical conditions, and it occurs in normal aging and development. So this science really applies to every patient you have. And in fact, the balance of antioxidants and the ability to control reactive oxidative species, reactive nitrogen species, the free radicals that are self-produced, really start to dominate the antioxidants that are produced sometime around 30. So this is something that is really needed by every person. Could you click again, please? The repair of the damaged cell membranes and the removal of impaired membrane lipids and toxic molecules from cells are essential to recovery and health. That's obvious, but we've never had a way to do that before this science was developed. I mean, you have alpha lipoic acid and other nutrients that will inhibit the peroxidation of lipid membranes. But this is the first time, at least so far, that we've been able to identify in the medical literature whereby damaged cell membranes are truly repaired, and we force out the removal, the removal of oxidized membrane lipids and other toxic molecules that are essential to health and recovery. Could you click it again, please? The clinical studies have demonstrated the advantages of membrane lipid replacement in restoring membrane and organelle function and reducing fatigue, pain, and other symptoms in chronic illnesses in aging patients. Could you click it again, please? Membrane lipid replacement has been used in vitro studies to demonstrate its ability to increase cell motility and resistance to oxidative damage. We had taken material from the we had taken sperm from the human body, and we had doused that with hydrogen peroxide, for example, and other methods, but to demonstrate this resistance to oxidative damage. Can you click it again, please? Doctor, could you, Clearfield, could you click it again, please?
Yeah. I'm having a little trouble with is it the
Just hit
next slide?
the return.
Yeah, there you go.
It enhances the bioavailability of other nutrients and their transport across intestinal epithelial cell barriers. And then we have, could you click it again, please? We also post now, all of our research is available at this address below, ntfactor.com/research. Because most of our papers mention diseases, and we test people who have disease situations, but we're looking for quality of life and results, endpoints. The FTC states that should we put a paper on the internet, we are in effect making claims. So the only place where we make this address available is to medical professionals only in meetings like this. But the address is ntfactor.com/research. And we have, I think, north of 55 peer-reviewed and published papers at this time. And that's what we show on the internet at that particular site. Could you click it again, please? Generally, nutritional companies like ours want to do 2 double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. And this one was done. It was done independently of us. It was done in Japan, and it women who complained of fatigue and were evaluated for menopausal-related factors. As you can see here, menopausal status, lifestyle factors, and so on. And sleep. So 89 women completed the study. Can you click it, please? And this trial was done in Japan, and it was not under our control. Basically, these 2 bullet points that are in bolded are the most important. The improvements in the high dose group, which was we sell these wafers that contain NT factor, and one has only NT factor in it called patented energy, and that's what they use for this trial, and that's 1.2 grams of NT factor lipids in each wafer. So going down below the conclusions, a high dose, 1,200 milligrams a day, it's 1 wafer, increased vigor, lowered blood pressure, and cardio ankle vascular index was lowered as well in the women who presented with fatigue. And the increased vigor as well, which is really increased relief of fatigue. Would you click it again, please? Now, this is a second double-blind study. We looked at cancer patients who are on at least their, it was not their initial round of treatment for cancer. So they were people who had, their disease reoccurred, and they were eligible for the trial. So using a crossover, placebo-controlled, randomized, double-blind design, we had 36 patients were treated in the blinded trial, and simultaneously we did an open label trial with 22 other patients. And we used a multivitamin that had NT factor as a base. NT factor is a blend of phosphoglycolipids, pre and probiotics. And we also sell NT factor lipids, which is just the lipids by themselves, a blend of the results were that 81% improvement as measured by the patients themselves, and smaller amounts, the remainder of the 19% were no change or a worsening of the chemotherapy-related side effects of fatigue, nausea, impaired taste, diarrhea, general tiredness, constipation, and insomnia. There were some induced toxicities that were not really helped by us, like the mouth sores or skin changes. And questionnaires were completed by the patients and by the nurses. And we did this study in about, it was supervised by UCLA Harbor Hospital, and they provided the IRB as well. But we had used about, I think it was somewhere around 12 different cancer centers around the country, mostly in the New York, New England area, and the Southwest area of California. Could you click it, please, Dr. Clearfield? So this chart here is a response to Propax. That's the name of the product that we use in the unblinded study. And patients are here on the left. The nurse's response was here on the right. So they were observing their patients, obviously. And down below, we tell you what these patients were treated with, one or more of these fluorosil, leucovorin, carboplatinum. If you're familiar with these things, then you know. And the diagnosis ranged from colon, rectal, pancreatic cancer, and that was amended to include sarcoma, breast, and ovarian cancers. And so overall, overwhelmingly, these patients felt better while on the supplement. And this was the unblinded study, so there was no crossover here. Could you click again, please, Dr. Clearfield? Okay, so this is the double-blinded study here. So on the left-hand side, you have patients who began on placebo and cross over to Propax. And so these results are shown at the end of the trial, which I think was 12 weeks. So overwhelmingly, these patients who started out, with the chemotherapy and a placebo, and after 6 weeks cross over to Propax. The nurses observed, was you have to go, there we are, right there. The nurses' observations seemed to be stronger than the patients in this first thing here, but it still dominated over the people who felt worse. And on the right side is the people who began with the supplement and crossed over to placebo. And they were pretty similar results. What the point this particular two charts make is that, you can, in a disease-related situation, you can introduce the supplement. Really, we have multiple supplements, a supplement that uses NT factor as a base, and get these types of results where you can really interfere and really improve the status of the patient for the quality of life benefits. Could you click, Dr. Clearfield, please? So this trial here now, I showed you the two double-blinded studies, and I'm going fast. If anybody is welcome to interrupt me if they have a question. I started with the two double-blind studies because that's what people want. And but these two trials here that I'm going to show you now this is really showing you how this stuff works. And we provide this in tablets, capsules, powder. And this particular study was done at Henry Ford Hospital by Michael Seidman and crew. It looked at nerve function, energy, and genetic damage in rats. So the effects of NT-factor lipids on aging and age-associated hearing loss were studied in rats by measuring hearing sensitivities using auditory brainstem responses. It's a pretty standard measure. Additionally, mitochondrial function was measured, seen as a measure of aging, but assessed by determining mitochondrial membrane potentials using flow cytometry, and amplified mitochondrial DNA deletions were also examined. The mitochondrial membrane potentials really define, in action, they define the function of the mitochondria. So if you want to upregulate output, you want to upregulate membrane potential. Now, it's easy to give somebody a little shot of the membrane potential here, but the idea is to upregulate it, keep it upregulated as a normal course of the day. And then we, the third point here is looking at the how the study was performed. So the experimental group was supplemented orally for 6 months with NT-factor lipids. And they, because this published in Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery, which typically referred to as a referee journal. And Dr. Simon, felt that he had to use the word lecithin rather than, NT-factor, which was part of the rules of that journal. Could you hit click, Doctor? So this is basically the design. It's a crossover trial, so it sort of speaks for itself. But we looked at mitochondrial DNA deletion studies, which were the aging flow cytometry of the mitochondria. What we did was we provided a staining fluorescent dye, which acts as an NAD mimicker. And so that goes up into the electron transport chain. And as it goes through the electron transport chain, it acts as a fluorescent dye to demonstrate its transport. Would you hit click, please? Now, the results we got in the flow cytometry revealed significantly higher mitochondrial membrane potentials in the treated subject, and they suggested preserved mitochondrial function. So in midlife, where this was introduced to these rats, through the end of their life, which they were euthanized, so it was defined, they maintained their mitochondrial function. Whereas the control rats, they had normal loss of membrane potential. In the auditory brainstem responses recorded every 2 months, they also showed the same thing, significant preservation of hearing sensitivities in the treated subjects. In the common agent mitochondrial DNA deletion, as described there inside parentheses, were amplified from the brain and cochlear tissue, including stria vascularis and auditory nerve. So this specific deletion in the treated group was found less frequent compared with the controls. And I have a chart that will show you that and explain that a little better than I just did. So the general conclusion that they reached was that they demonstrated that the effects on age-related hearing loss, the protective effects of age-related hearing loss, and essentially they did not have any decline in function of the nerve, its ability to safeguard mitochondrial function by preserving the mitochondrial membrane potential and protect mitochondrial DNA from oxidative stress, oxidative damage. And that's pretty significant, I think. And this was in rats, Hall and Fisher rats, which are specifically looked at for anti-aging studies. Dr. Clearfield, could you hit click, please? So this is looking at the mitochondrial membrane potential on the inner membrane, where the electron transport chain is and so forth. So at baseline, both groups were relatively equal. The control group was here on the left, and over here, the control group is on the left. So the test group was here, had a membrane potential that was roughly similar to where they started, as where the control group, they just they went as rats normally do, untreated, and so they progressively lost membrane potential, hence energy and so forth. They age as we would normally expect them. So this was measured by the mean intensity of mitochondrial specific fluorescent rhodamine 123 uptake dye. If you have any questions about that, we have a little slide that's going to explain that a little bit better, more completely in a little while. And but please just interrupt and ask any questions you wish to. Please, Dr. Clearfield, could you click? This is a preservation of mitochondrial DNA. And so the control group is here on the left. And what this is showing is that, and this is at the end of 6 months, the DNA demonstrates that they preserved the status of the DNA, mitochondrial DNA in the mitochondria, and that the untreated rats had, continued to collect this aging deletion, meaning that they were more exposed to diseases of aging because of this. It's interesting that the mitochondrial DNA plays a significant role in aging-related diseases, and this seems to be one of the ways in which it does it. Would you hit click, please, Dr. Clearfield? So on the left here is a control group, and this is their auditory test. So as you can see, the decibels on the left here had to go higher and higher as time went on in order for these animals to hear anything. On the right side, you have a graph that shows you, I'm not quite sure how they did this, because I would have expected a control to have an upward graph, but they're showing kilohertz on the scale here. And so the point of the graph is that the treated specimens heard sounds more easily, and that was one of the proofs. And of course, all these results that we're showing you had statistical significance. Could you hit click again, Dr. Clearfield? So these were the conclusions, and this is what the journal said: preserve mitochondrial membrane potential, hence mitochondrial function. Hence mitochondrial function was actually my words. Protect mitochondrial DNA from oxidative damage, protect against age-related hearing loss by protecting the nerve, as you saw earlier. Could you hit click, please? Now, we tried to do these same results. We wanted to do this in humans, but we got the results in the animals by doing biopsies at the end of the trial, which we really couldn't do in people except for the mitochondria. And also, we were using white blood cells from the bloodstream because we didn't want to do biopsies, which we did in animals. And halfway through the trial, Douglas Wallace published a paper saying that these white blood cells did not have enough memory to make these judgments about the mitochondrial DNA deletions, which was interesting. But so what we really showed in this study here, anti-factor restores mitochondrial function and reduces moderately severe fatigue at age and substance. We showed that we could take a population that had an average age of 70 years, and actually, to be precise, 69.5. And we also had a control group which were people under the age of 30, determined to be in good health, working at the hospital. And they had an average age of 29 years. So at the end of this trial, the test group was able to recover the membrane potential, the mitochondrial membrane potential, equal or better than the control group at the end of 8 to 12 weeks. They really matched the control group, the 30-year-old group, who was being given nothing. They matched them at the end of 12 weeks. And that's pretty substantial, because while you're not improving the musculature or anything like that, you are giving these people an opportunity to have the same degree of physical output as they had 40 years earlier. I mean, I think that's pretty stunning. So the results were the test group with an average of 70 years surpassed the mitochondrial membrane potential of the control group at the end of 12 weeks. Would you hit click, please, Dr. Clearfield? So in the functional assay, this rhodamine dye test, the rhodamine 123 uptake into the mitochondria and its fluorescence is a direct measure of mitochondrial function and intermembrane, transmembrane electrical and chemical potential, which is a gradient. Excuse me. Mitochondria are isolated from blood leukocytes of aged subjects, and the fluorescent dye, rhodamine 123, is added to the sample. The mitochondrial function is determined by a cellular fluorescence of a documented instrument. So that's essentially how it's done. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to interrupt. Could you click, Dr. Clearfield, please? So this is just a couple of pictures that on the bottom show a diseased cell. This particular cell was taken from a chronic fatigue syndrome patient, and you can see on the right hand side, which is looking at the fluorescent, the lit up mitochondria, and that's what you're looking at there. In the above cell, the healthy phase contrast, on the right hand side, you can visualize this where you've seen so many pictures of mitochondria. You can visualize that you're looking at what's lit up is the electron transport chain in the inner membrane. So this really shows, thank you very much. This really shows you the contrast between a healthy and an unhealthy cell in terms of what you're trying, fluorescence of the rhodamine redox dye. Would you hit click, please, Dr. Clearfield? And this is the design of the trial. I mean, you've seen these things 100 times before, I'm sure. But in this crossover, we did a washout, and then we measured their. What we were really measuring was the ability of these people to maintain the value of the product they had taken for 12 weeks. Could you click again, Doctor? So in this slide here, these are people that are starting the trial. Day 0, this was their membrane potential of mitochondria. And so day 30, day 60, day 120. And you can see at 8 weeks, which is the third one, and the 12 weeks, they're about the same. So really, it seems to be that, if you get the dosing right, it seems to optimize at 8 weeks or around 8 weeks, and but will be maintained. And I think that's what the 120 days shows. So if you visualize this in treatment, if you get to this point where you have upregulated the membrane potential, and what you've done is you've made healthier the membrane itself. So all the functions that happen in this barrier are now happening more effectively. So they're getting more out of nutrition that's coming into the cell at this point, 60 days, 120 days. They're getting more out of the nutrition coming into the cell, and they're getting better detoxification coming in and out of the mitochondria. And that's very important. And you're also, what we're able to show in the animal study there before is where you have reoxidative ROS, reactive oxidative species and other free radicals that are auto-produced by the person, you're able to start decreasing that amount of free radicals that are bouncing around the body. Because you're sealing up you're sealing up the wall, the membrane. You're pushing out oxidized lipids, and you're fixing those holes with young vital lipids. And so you get less fallout of free radicals and nitrogen related reactive free radicals. So you're reducing the immune burden, but you're also optimizing the electron transport chain and the production of ATP. Could you click, Dr. Clearfield, please? So we cross over to the placebo arm, and this is what happened. So if you think back to the last slide, the mean fluorescence was measured at 950. At the end of 12 weeks here of being washed out with a p-value of 0.0001, they had a higher performance measurement than they did when they started this trial. The point is that the washout is slow. It washes out, and you go back to, without continuing the supplementation, you ultimately lose the function that you gain, but it's slowly. It's not like you stop taking it and 15 minutes later you feel washed out. This is a very slow washout, and I think that's important because people are not really good pill takers and things like that. You can rest assured that your therapy is going to be effective even with lackadaisical patients. Could you click, Dr. Clearfield, please? So fatigue, now what I've done here is I've shown you the double-blind studies, and I've also shown you what I think of the mechanical studies, what I like to call the mechanical studies, how this works. Meaning that it repairs the membrane, it restores the membrane, and we did it in the inner membrane of the mitochondria in all these patients. That's where we took our measurements. The membrane lipids exist in a state of dynamic equilibrium throughout the body, and that was established in the 1972 paper that Nicholson and Singer, had written, and that was, that's still considered the premier paper in understanding biomembranes, and it's evolved as well. So switching to fatigue, because we're really promoting the use of it for anti-aging, for fatigue, and for enhanced bioavailability. So we have evaluated more than 300 participants using one tool, the Piper Fatigue Scale, which is a fatigue scale that we took out of the cancer industry. It had been validated in multiple journals. And so we started using that when we did the trial at UCLA. And we've stayed with that ever since, so we could do many different disease conditions and still provide the same scale as a survey tool. So all the fatigue studies have had statistically significant results, not a hit and miss here and there. Every fatigue study we did had statistically significant results, ranging from 26 to 43% reduction of fatigue within a confined period of time. Trials included and evaluated participants who complained of fatigue and had other medical issues, including cardiovascular, fibromyalgia, neurobehavior, infections, Lyme, mycoplasmas, fertility, anemia, cancer, spinal injury, and all had relief of fatigue to varying degrees without side effects. And we have, the peer-reviewed published data to make those statements. And I think that's very helpful. Would you click, please, Dr. Clearfield? Now, we've done this on 15 studies, and this is just a sampling. I don't want to belabor the point, but the headline sort of, makes a point, and it shows you where the paper is. So chronic fatigue, 40.5 reduction in fatigue. Chronic fatigue, again, 43.1 reduction in fatigue. A weight loss trial. Obesity fatigue, 24% reduction in fatigue. Aging, chronic fatigue, 36.8 reduction in fatigue. Would you hit click, please, Dr. Clearfield? Lyme disease, fatigue, 26% reduction. Gulf War illness, 34.6. We do a lot of work with soldiers. It's just an interest of mine and an interest of Garth Nicholson. And between the two of us, we're really deciding what gets done and doesn't. Chronic fatigue, a 40.5% reduction in fatigue. Would you hit click again, Dr. Clearfield? So in one of the papers, I just pulled this out. I should have referenced the paper down here at the bottom, but I didn't, and I apologize for that. So these are some of the results. The condition of illness on the left-hand column, the average age in the group of, I should have given you the end, but I didn't, well, the paper didn't actually. Using the Piper fatigue scale, this was their reduction in fatigue and their statistical value on the right-hand side. And you can see all of these had, good, solid significance. Could you please hit click again? Thank you. This is reduction of fatigue. So what this slide is really talking about is this Piper fatigue scale. So the Piper fatigue scale overall measures the degree of fatigue a person has. But it has 4 subsets, all which, are considered valid. Behavioral, which provides a description of the severity of the fatigue. And I had a person one time, that sort of shocked me when he told me, but I asked him about what his fatigue was. And he described that he wanted to lay down in the middle of a busy road while he was crossing the road. It really stunned me. Number 2, it's affective, meaning they looked at feelings such as pleasant, unpleasant, agreeable, disagreeable. Another area which is defining, the value of the sensory perception, strong, weak, lively, listless, and cognitive, which is memory, etc. So this was all really nice information. In multiple trials, we measured, we did statistics on these subsets, and we came out with good results, mostly significant, but I don't have them here today. And I apologize for that. Could you hit click, Dr. Clearfield, please? This test here, now I don't want to belabor the fatigue because it's it is what it is, and we have statistical significance over every study that we've done for the reduction of fatigue, and a substantial reduction of fatigue, really life-changing for these people, many of them. This is a trial where we looked at the bioavailability of 3 test nutrients: CoQ10, curcumin, and quercetin. And for example, CoQ10 had a 2.1 times more compared to controls. Now we did this in a laboratory. This is not a human study, but this is a gold standard test that's used to define the viability of the bioavailability of these different nutrients. So we also had similar results with the curcumin and the quercetin, not so much of a difference. But it shows that when you use this as an ingredient in a multi-nutrient formula, it now not only in the enhanced absorption of the nutrients, but also the potential ability of NT factor lipids to provide support for cell membranes and mitochondrial function and anti-aging. Would you hit click, please, Dr. Clearfield? So this is a chart that looks at the rate of improvement. So, and you can see the upward measurements. This is curcumin on the bottom. This green, bullet is CoQ10, and this is at the top, we have quercetin. So the results of quercetin were not as impressive, say, as the CoQ10, but really across the board, we believe that we have great bioavailability of synergistic nutrients. But the hard to absorb ones, like CoQ10 and curcumin, seem to be the ones that help the most. Would you hit click, please, Dr. Clearfield? So now this is a study where we used one of our supplements called Healthy Curb on weight loss. And Healthy Curb is a blend of amylase inhibitor and NT-factor lipids. Well, this is an NT-factor version where we use pre and probiotics with the lipids. The objective was to see if patients could safely lose weight, so forth. The entire group, population 30, lost an average of 3 pounds with average reductions of 1, 5, and 1 inches in hip and waist, respectively. 63% of the respondents lost an average of 6 pounds, which meant 2.5 and 1.5 reduction in hip and waist measurements, respectively. The fatigue suppression, using a Piper fatigue scale, the entire test group lost an average of 23% decrease in overall fatigue. And the really interesting and surprising thing that happened was the participants had reduced hunger and reduced cravings for sweets. And so it's my opinion, based on my own experience with this product and also working with a lot of people, both in the trial and anecdotally. This product, any 4 to 6 tablets per day, causes a person's appetite to shift away from carbohydrates. Now, one of the things that I don't typically talk about because it has nothing to do with the science is, this whole subject of membrane lipid replacement really started. I was working with Bob Atkins in the late 70s and through the 80s, in 1980s. And he was a guy who gave his patients exclusively this high-fat, high-protein diet and gave them 0 carbs, a real extreme, high-fat, high-protein diet. And a particular thing would happen. They would, almost universally, these patients would hit a wall anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 weeks after starting the program. They start the diet. They would be talking about how great they felt, never felt better in the first 3-4 weeks. And then all of a sudden they'd hit this wall. And the question was, why would they hit this wall? Where they just, if they make it through the wall, and it usually lasted about a week, if they made it through that, they were going to succeed long-term on this diet. If they didn't make it, they were going to go back to the same lifestyle, eating the carbs, et cetera. And that's where this all started. We were looking for a way to minimize that change. I mean, we were part of the group that, felt carbohydrates were not a great thing going back, this long ago. And this is 40 years ago. And so, Dr. Atkins' practice was perfect to try to figure out how to break through that wall. And, we all have theories why it exists and so forth. And to a great degree, we were accomplishing that. We happened to make their vitamins there. So that gave us a chance to, and in those years, you didn't have all the rules and regulations that you have today. So we were able to do a lot of experimentation, so to speak. Dr. Clearfield, would you hit click, please? So now this trial here, and I'm just trying to show you a sampling of the trials that we have done and continue to do. This was a reduction of pain, fatigue, GI, and other symptoms, improvement in quality of life in fibromyalgia patients with membrane lipid replacement. That's NT-factor lipids. We were using wafers that we had, which is total 4.8 grams of NT-factor lipids, and 1 caffeinated pill, which was NT-factors plus 184 milligrams in a wafer. And so, so there was a small amount of caffeine in this population as well. So if you go to the next page, if you hit click, please, Dr. Clearfield. So after 2 weeks with this in the open label trial, using the Yale pain inventory scale, they had a 32% reduction in pain. In the Wisconsin brief pain inventory, they had a 37.5% reduction in the BPI score. Again, if you look at these p-values, you can see how reliable this information is. So the reduction in widespread pain was 28.2% over a 2-week period. So now we had started, based on this, we then went to we had started a double-blind randomized control in 2019. In 2019, that pandemic virus started showing up. By March of 2020, and this study was still going on, it was out of control with the COVID virus, the hospital situation, the patient situations. Everybody was scared and believed touch. So in any event, we had to suspend the trial. So we were doing a double-blind randomized crossover placebo-controlled trial on fibromyalgia patients with this. And we will resume that at some point in time. But right now, everybody's still recovering from this. Would you please click it, Dr. Clearfield? So MLR use in fibromyalgia, open label studies, average age of 51. 1.8 reduction GI symptoms, 55%. Of life aid is 49%, and widespread 10%. And as you can see on the right, they're all statistically significant measurements. Would you please go forward? Click it, Dr. Clearfield. So reduction in peripheral pain by fibromyalgia. So we are doing tests. We're doing down we are doing studies down in Montevideo, Monte in Uruguay, and we believe this is what might be happening based on those tests. Normalization of peripheral nerve resting potentials, effects on peripheral nerve transmission, reduction of peripheral inflammatory cytokines, effects on peripheral microcirculation, and effects on gastrointestinal permeability. And when we say this last one, what we mean is a positive effect on gastrointestinal permeability and a positive effect on peripheral microcirculation. So it's promising, and we're going to go on and do further studies. Could you click it forward, please, Dr. Clearfield? So now this trial here, this was, we did, what's it called? We went back and we looked at the records of patients who had been using these products that were heavy in NT factor. And so we did a chart review. That's essentially what this trial is. 35 random patients, 28 female, 7 male, with an average age of 61 years. We're on NT factor at least 2 grams per day for 6 months. So we looked at the blood chemistry, homocysteine, fasting insulin, the sedimentation rate, HDL, LDL, BUN, GGP, and so forth, triglycerides, creatinine. Blood was taken every 2 months for 6 months. Patient assessments were done every 2 months in the regular course of business, I believe. Could you click forward, please, Dr. Clearfield? So the homocysteine, dropped from 1185 to 740, p-value 0.001. And just as a side in red, I put it here, conventionally above 10.8 microliters per liter is considered an increased cardiovascular disease risk. Fasting insulin went from 12.8 to 5.3. High density lipoproteins went from 65.2 to 60.3. Low density lipoproteins went from 115 to 121. C-reactive protein went from 2.91 to 2.02. So this LDL is really the only thing that's not significant here on this page, I suppose. All other blood chemistries, that we looked at were not significant, so we're not showing them to you. And no adverse events during the 6-month period. Would you please click, Dr. Clearfield? So just as an aside, homocysteine levels are risk factors for cardiovascular disease, stroke and brain diseases, birth defects, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia, autism spectrum, renal failure, type 2 diabetes, macular degeneration, and osteoporosis, amongst others. Could you please click forward, Dr. Clearfield? So this is a graph of mortality and hospitalizations. based on the homocysteine levels in your blood. So the higher it is, et cetera. Could you click forward, please? So we just took 4 patients that show you what we were looking at, 3 months, 6 months, and their blood levels. This is homocysteine, this chart. So these 4 patients, this is how their statistics, behave. Would you click forward, please? And the fasted insulin blood levels, this again, same patients, this is how they behaved. And these are, they're just their results on a chart. Would you click forward, please? So we're now switching again to another subject that we're studying, and we're looking at the effect of NT factor lipids on fertility, and also energy levels in horses. So we were able to incubate this stallion spermatozoa with a mixture of NTFL micelles at a concentration of 0.1%. Does indeed result in the incorporation of exogenous phosphoglycolipids into the sperm plasma and in the membranes, as previously described. And the supplementation of this in vitro storage diminished the effects of lipid peroxidation, most certainly due to reasons stated, previously improving sperm viability and motility parameters. Would you click forward, please, Doctor? So the functional X, we were able to visualize in this particular study, and again, this was horses. The functional evidence of NT factor lipids incorporation into sperm membranes. I mean, they're pretty simple organisms related to other, tissue, but here they were transparent and so forth. We could see the migration of these lipids into the sperm membranes and into the mitochondria. Protective role against the loss of function and motility, degraded by oxidative stress, protective role of NT factor lipids against the loss of membrane potential, promoted by oxidative stress, and sperm are just all mitochondria. Results suggest that would be a relevant approach for the treatment of infertility in males when it's linked to increased oxidative stress. So these are pretty nice results, and they're actually leading to some very interesting work. We've received a grant to evaluate this therapy in thoroughbred stallions. Could you go forward, please, Dr. Clearfield? So membrane lipid replacement, what is it? It's oral membrane replacement. It is a use of membrane matching glycerol phospholipids. We only mentioned the 5 major ones here, but we actually use, I don't know, in excess of, we've been able to identify more than 100. But what we look for are unsaturated fatty acids. This is very, very important. Unsaturated fatty acids, a combination of 18,2 fatty acids, 18,1 fatty acids, and 18,0 fatty acids. So we really want to have a high volume of the 18,2, the linoleic acids. The 18,1, which are like olive oil and other minimally unsaturated fatty acids, to replace damaged membranes and restore function. So overall, we look for less than 10% of saturated fatty acids, and we find these in plants, not in animal or fish, not in animal foods. We find this in plants, and we offer our main product is made with soy, extracts of soy. We use a blend of fractionated phospholipids. And we also make available a blend that's taken from sunflower. Because so many people, have this belief about soy. we have found ways to protect these phosphoglycerol, the GPLs. We found a way to protect them from their environment, the oxygenated and enzymatic base. The problem with giving people phospholipids is in the stomach, the phospholipase just breaks them apart. And so if your intention is to put them into the membrane, to use them for membrane lipids, you don't want them broken apart. You want them to be, incorporated as 18.2, 18.1 fatty acids, because that's what is optimum in the biolipid membrane. If you use it, 18.2, 18.1 are a long chain fatty acids. But if you would say to go with fish or with fish, where your main fatty acids are EPA and DHA, those are very long chain fatty acids. And now the problem, the difference in these long chain fatty acids and very long chain fatty acids, and why the cell membrane seems to have selectively used the 18.2 and 18.1 in healthy situations, is the longer fatty acids, they tend to be loosey-goosey because they have so many double bonds. And double bonds is where the fatty acid chain is attacked by free radicals. So, you've always seen where you can put a steak and hang it up for 2 months in the pantry, but you can't do that with fish. Fish are like guests, they go bad after 3 days. And it's because their fatty acids are so fragile. They're very long chain fatty acids, and they have 5 and 6 double bonds in these fatty acids, as opposed to 2 and 1. So we use a ratio of about 70% linoleic, 15% oleic, which is the 18.1, and the remainder is stearic and one other saturated fat that I right now can't think of. But in any event, with small amounts of the saturated fats. And we really get a nice mixture that's healthy for the cell because it preferentially takes it up. And you don't see that with any other fatty acids. They have to go, if you do give them these very long chain fatty acids, that they have to go into the peroxisome of the cell, which is another organelle, and they've got to get all cut up and enzymatically. And a person's got to have the energy and ability to do that, to make this work for that purpose. So while there is very healthy reasons to use them as membrane lipid replacement, it's not ideal. And in fact, it's questionable whether it would even work or not, because they will not be taken up as very long chain fatty acids. And so we also use specific fructooligosaccharides to protect these phospholipids from being digested before being absorbed into the membrane in the GI tract. And once they're in the membrane of the GI tract, they have a transport system with many avenues to choose from, whereby they move from cell to cell and from lipid layer to lipid layer. But you've got to get them in there first before that starts happening. So lipid replacement therapy has been used in formulations with CoQ10 and NADH, carnitine, AKG, alpha-ketoglutarate acid, and others. So Dr. Clearfield, if you don't mind, please forward. So I'm really at the end of the lecture, and I hope I didn't take too long. Yeah, it's in 9:03, so I guess we're pretty good. Apologize if this seemed to rush or anything like that. So the lecture, we're really showing how the cell membrane structure has evolved from static to dynamic models, started with the fluid mosaic model. And that's where the close relationship with Dr. Garth Nicholson comes from, because the ideas that we found in the fluid mosaic model And and as many of you know, that model has just come so far forward. Lipid lipid islands and so forth. But anyway, these fatty acids are the fabric of the membrane. This is what is common while you have certain membranes having lots of proteins and different amounts of, transfer proteins and so forth. They all use the same fatty acid and relatively the same density of these fatty acids. They want the 18-2 because of it creates just the right amount of space between the lipids so that they can be both flexible and have the integrity, so they're not letting through material that shouldn't be let through in or out. And as you can see, it has great therapy, a hint of great therapy, reducing homocysteine, fasting insulin levels, etc. Dr. Clearfield, could you forward, please? So this is where we can stop. And this is just a schematic of the milestones in membrane research, starting in 1925 and so forth. And now Nicholson did this, and he published this in one of the journals where they had the recent anniversary of the original fluid mosaic model being published by Nicholson and Singer, and that was 1972 in Scientific American. And but right here to the right, where Nicholson and Escriba published lipid therapy, this is really us. And this is really a therapy that my company came up with and patented, by the way. And I'm kind of proud of that. So this is a fluid mosaic model, which from my point of view is where it all started. And so today, coming out of the pandemic, we are right now, we're part of a grant that is allowing us to test the thoroughbred horses using this therapy. And that's really an important thing for us. We want to be able to show improved performance. And these are athletes of, these are very fine, athletes if you put them, if you compare them with humans at the top of their game and so forth. And we're looking to improve performance and fertility, and make them more valuable as a stud horse and so forth, and things like that. So, and we're continuing to fibromyalgia. We're going to restart that study at some point in the next year, maybe 2 years. We'll see how it goes, and other things. So please, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them.
Wow. Where to begin? Are you done with the slides, Dr. Casey?
Oh, John, please. Yes. Yeah, if you'd like to take them away, that's fine.
Okay. Stop share. And wow, there was a lot to unpack there, huh?
Yes, I know. And now it's a short time. I apologize for going so quick.
No, that's fine. So there's a couple of questions in the chat. Some of them are sort of repeats, but maybe you just can summarize. So what is NT factor?
It's a blend of phosphoglycolipids. We have two blends, one from soy and one from sunflower. And our starter material is lecithin. And lecithin by definition is protein-free. And we take fractions that we have learned work. And we've been doing this we formed Nutritional Therapeutics in 1993 for the purpose of promoting this technology. So we had been working with that for at least 10 years since before this point in time. And my experience with Bob Atkins, was in the 1970s and the 1980s, all the way up to the time we started this. So we started out just looking for a way to these particular patients that he had and the therapy that he was using, presented one problem, and that was these people hitting this wall anywhere between 4 and 6, 7 weeks. And I rationalize this wall, much like an athlete that gets that. I'm talking about athletes that are not well advanced, not well developed, where they have to they run for a few minutes and then they get excessively tired. Their legs are like rocks, and if they push through that, that feeling and so forth, they get to a point where all of a sudden they feel like they're running with the wind, and it's the easiest thing in the world to do, and it's called getting your second wind. But what actually happens as the athlete gets better in shape, better performing, what happens is they go from burning glucose to burning fatty acids efficiently, and that is your second wind. And so we analogize that to be happening with these patients, where they're being starved of carbohydrates, they're running out of the reserves that carbohydrates provide and so forth, and they're hitting this wall. And if we can help them get through this wall, then they'll go on with this diet and their life will change on a relatively permanent basis and make them happier people. So we started this way. We're working, we built a blend of this lecithin extracts of carnitine, alpha lipoic acid, other nutrients, pre and probiotics. This was long before, people knew about this. In fact, I have a friend who's watching this tonight. I saw his name up there when I first met him. He was afraid of these probiotics, and now today they're the greatest thing. So anyway, we built this and used this as a base in the products that we were making for Dr. Atkins. And so that's where this started. We were invited to do a study at Henry Ford, and we realized then that these phospholipids that we were, creating were being absorbed and having a biological effect inside the body. In other words, across the gastrointestinal membrane, which wasn't supposed to happen. I mean, these were effectively saponins, and in those days, we were taught that they were not absorbed into the body because they were detergents. And now we know very differently. And we discovered this through that clinical trial and serendipitously. And then we started doing research, and we are where we're at right now.
Great. Next question. Any contraindications, allergies?
Well, we've sold at this point, we've probably, caused people to consume north of 150 million doses, and you don't have any side effects. I mean, you might have a little flatulence occasionally. And when we did the clinical trial at UCLA with cancer patients, in that case, we had a fair amount of flatulence from people. And we just suggest to them that they should stop the therapy for 2 days and go back on it, and that took care of that being a problem.
It comes as a
But
wafer.
really nothing else. We've had no allergies, but we use lecithins and we further purify it.
Mm-hmm. It comes
lecithins by definition are protein free.
It comes as a wafer. That's what I understand.
No, it comes as tablets, as capsules. Research Nutritional, a company you guys are fairly familiar with, I think, out of Santa Barbara. They sell, we make ATP fuel for them. They put that in capsules. We put that in capsules for them. But we make at my office, we make mostly tablets because I'm partial to the tablets. It's really nothing more than a personal bias, and that's how that evolved. We make available the anti-factor lipids by themselves, only recently, last 5 years or so. And that's in a powder right now. We're looking for other delivery systems for it. because
How
it's
about it?
becoming very popular. Where, they use just the anti-factor lipids by themselves. And we've shown in multiple studies that they have the same characteristics as the tablets. They improve the membrane potential, they upregulate the mitochondria, and that's really what we're looking for it to do.
How about in a
Pardon me?
transdermal form? Is
We
that
haven't done that yet.
okay?
It would work, but we haven't done that yet. Although I don't know how large a dose. I don't know a lot about the transdermal delivery system, so my fear at the beginning it would be, would they get a large enough dose?
Again, you did answer this, but if you could just summarize, what is the association between NT factor and homocysteine? I thought homocysteine was related to methylation and folate B12.
Well, we're just showing the results of the trial. I'm not educated as a biochemist, so I don't want to get into it too much. But it does have the effect of reducing homocysteine in the
Okay.
blood
Yeah.
significantly, as you saw in those results.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was a retroactive, that was a chart review that we gathered that information.
Because we use a methylated form of B vitamins for to reduce homocysteine.
Yes.
So, what does it cost?
It's I think the MSRP something around $90 or somewhere between $70 and $90 for a 150-gram bottle.
Okay.
I don't get involved too much in that part of the operation, so I don't mean to sound ignorant, but it's around that.
All right.
We
so-
make it available to contract manufacturers in bulk,
Mhm.
and those prices vary.
Okay, so we as practitioners, can we get this from your company itself, or do we get it?
Yeah,
through-
you can get, if you contact us, and our information was right there in the first slide. If you contact us, we will send all the necessary information to you.
Okay,
And
great.
yeah.
Any experience with long COVID?
Yes, we published a paper relatively recently. So there is a paper, there that we published, and people could look into that. So I don't want to say too much on it at this time.
Does it contain choline?
Yeah, PC, and phosphatidylcholine.
Right.
We use, that's one of the important lipids in the biomembrane. So we do use that. We use that, we do really focus on phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylethanolamine, phosphatidylglycerol. Those are probably our three most, important ones, and certainly more, the PC and the PE is the more dominant ones. The PG, I'm interested in that because it's a direct precursor to cardiolipid, and which is for those who don't know, it's a peculiar fat in the mitochondrial membrane that really determines the there's a rate limiting factor in the membrane.
Does it affect any TMAO?
And so, but there's many, pardon me?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The TMAO levels, does it affect that?
I don't have any data on that I know of.
Okay. This is our Dr. Siegel, our resident integrative veterinarian. Any studies in dogs and cats? And if not, would you like to do some studies in dogs and cats?
Well, we've done studies in horses, and we've done studies in rats, and we have a product called Pet Power, which, to be honest with you, is really the same blend, and the animals love it. There's a video on our website of us feeding the lipids to dogs, and so yeah, we feel it's very good for pets, and we feel that there'll be good products for them. We have one customer that's doing biscuits for the dogs and the cats, and that should come out in the next year.
Does it enhance cellular communication?
We believe so. Yeah, we believe so.
Dr. Burgess, who's our neural therapist, states that it stabilizes cell membranes to increase intracellular voltage via lidocaine injections. Any,
If you could tell me about, repeat that, could you, please?
I can say it because I've been doing this for about 40 years. The Germans were the ones who introduced what's called neural therapy. And it's the treatment of systemic diseases with injections of local anesthetics. Primarily, it was Novocaine and lidocaine. I used lidocaine only in the last 40 years. Anyway, they found out and they got a Nobel Prize in what's called the patch clamp technique, in which they were measuring voltage variation between the membranes. And you mentioned your products increase the
Gradients.
yeah, the gradients were increased with both voltage and chemical transport, I think you said. So it seems that they figured out they enhance cellular communication by having increased voltage. And since are you increasing voltage in the cells through your process?
The answer, I think, is yes, but we measured via the gradients and, particularly the membrane potential.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, we use, standardized testing and the membrane potential is a definitive regulator of mitochondrial function and output. And so also it's free radical output. And so that's important to us. And we look at it from that, and that we don't want to get too deep into it.
That the Nobel Prize was in the category of cellular communication and its enhancement via that that potential you're discussing.
And but lidocaine was driving this?
Yes.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. And thank
Right.
you for going into that.
Yeah, and if you're increasing the membrane potential and you're increasing the enhancement of communication, I wonder if it makes it easier to practice acupuncture. In other words, can you combine acupuncture, neural therapy, and your products? It seems like they're all additive.
Well, I wouldn't be appropriate to answer that question.
but your observation is spot on, John. So,
Yeah.
what foods provide phospholipids?
Well, all plants do, all animals do. Animals tend to provide either saturated or very long chain fatty acids. Plants provide the phospholipids that you want to use in membrane lipid replacement. So they're pretty abundant in the environment. And I like the balance in soy, and I like the balance in sunflower.
Mhm. Is there anything that helps with increase the absorption of the phospholipids?
Protecting them from phospholipase.
Mhm.
They have electrical properties themselves. They, as you know, they form that soldier-like formation in the membrane. And that's a consequence of the physics of the molecule. And but if you can prevent it from being oxidized, then it's going to do that. If you can prevent it from being broken into pieces,
Mhm.
then it's going to be absorbed. And
Any
that's really one of the tricks we've developed here.
Any effects of taking lecithin alone?
There's nothing established in the medical literature. We had worked with allergy research, with Steve Levin, and neither one of us identified anything in the medical research that lecithin had these same properties. And we do a specific blend,
Right.
and that's not actually lecithin by itself, though we're using byproducts, or fractionated products derived from lecithin. But we use antioxidants and enzymes and so forth to protect it from digestion, from oxidation in the digestive process.
Mhm. So I'm the hormone guy here, and so I always ask these questions, especially if you brought up fertility, and any effect. Have you measured the effect of these NT factor on hormones, particularly testosterone and thyroid function?
Not really, no. We have looked at we've taken students and done sperm studies on
Mhm.
their ejections, and we've done with animals, and we've looked at them, and if we could, and in those studies, those were in vitro, we would, take the liquid from the animals and the material and from the students, and we would paint it with NT factor, and then we would look to see if it was absorbed, which in both cases it was,
Mhm.
and did it increase motility? I mean, real basic stuff. But we're not looking for we're not looking for its effect as a we're specifically not looking for its effect as a drug. I mean, we have a lot of incidental information that comes about because of the kind of studies we're doing,
Right.
but our focus is on the quality of life. We want to extend life. We want people to feel good up until days before they pass. We want to prevent long drawn out demise. And we're pretty successful at that.
Mhm. Okay, so that would be something that I would be interested in. So we're always looking for, over-the-counter, non-prescription ways to either enhance or diminish hormone levels, depending on the individual's needs. And so and I'm actually working with a group that manufactures a purified resveratrol, and a lot of the things that you mentioned as being positive effects with your NT factor, it seems to pop up in the resveratrol world also. Have you ever used it in synergy or combination with
Well,
that?
I use resveratrol in one product. I mean, I like it as an antioxidant, but I'm not sure where they would cross over.
Okay.
I
So
mean, NT factor, it really picks up where antioxidants leave off. I mean, antioxidants are, they're trying to, excuse me, they're attempting to neutralize the free radicals produced in the body by the mitochondria.
mhm,
And to a great extent, they succeed, but, the process of aging causes them to fail for one reason or another, whether they're outnumbered by free radicals, by poor membranes, I don't know. And, but we really push for them to the anti-factor lipids to preserve the membrane, to repair the membrane, to restore and upregulate its potential, and homogeneity.
mhm.
And that's what we're looking to do. We're not looking, and so we're really trying to restore the environment so that antioxidants can continue to be effective.
Okay. Have you ever, it's kind of a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. Have you ever attempted to perform a lethal dose?
Well, we've looked at the, Robert, are you still there? My ops manager. We know what the doses are, the toxicity levels are and so forth, but, I mean, you'd have to drown in this stuff before it was toxic.
Right. Well, I mean, we've had people take whole bottles of whatever. So,
Well, yeah, and the thing is here that in this case, that should not be toxic.
okay.
I mean, really, I don't even know the level of the level at which it is toxic. But it's in excess of anything that a rational person would use.
Can you review again a little bit about for appetite suppression or weight?
Well, this is where we blended NT factor lipids with amylase, that the kidney bean stuff, where the amylase inhibitor.
Mhm.
And the thing that was most interesting to me that came out of that was that, and if I'd still been working with Bob Atkins, I probably would have added this amylase inhibitor to our product, and but it worked to stem the appetite and cause people to just gravitate towards vegetables and proteins. and away from carbohydrates.
Okay.
Excuse me, just allergy stuff.
There's not a product with those two things in it, correct?
There is, it's called Healthy Curb.
Healthy Curb. Okay.
Yeah, and I think we have some that we can send you. Just
Okay.
let me hold on a moment.
So,
One second. Well, why don't you just talk on the
I've tried to, it's not working.
okay, all right, in any event, you have it in stock. Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, we could send you some of that, and if you just let us know your address and so forth, we'll send it out complimentary.
that would be great. So we're always looking for, the next, Healthy Curb, not phentermine, not something that's going to, cause cardiac stimulation.
No, but this phenomenon where they start shifting their diet, it's not quick.
Mhm.
I would think it takes, 2 months, 8 months, but they're making a shift in their natural diet away from carbohydrates. So the guy who loads his plate with home fries in the morning, French fries in the afternoon, that stuff seems to stop happening. And I think that's a really good thing.
Okay.
And this product does that for people, but they have to use 4 to 6 tablets a day. And it's not going to happen in a day. But the weight loss will begin to happen, moderately, but quickly.
Okay. Well, we have, ideas percolating to add to it. So,
Well, I'd love to come back, to tell you the
okay,
truth.
we love to have you. John, you have anything for us?
Very good lecture. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so
Well,
much
thank
for your
you.
time.
Thank
Can
you
I
very much.
can I make a comment?
Yes,
You guys
please.
could start earlier in the day.
Okay, well, if I were to summarize NT factor in one word, I think it's a godsend. Because
thank you.
I had a nasty case. I don't know how I got it of COVID. So when I got out of the hospital, I had a nasty cough and I took doxycycline. And I got better. And I did the methylene blue, the oxytocin, but the NT factor made a big difference. So when I go to my Tai Chi class, I give it to my instructor and he says, I want some. And then there's, a couple of people in the class says, here, try one. Oh, wow. So I get a response for it. I show it to some of the doctors there. They like it. So, I ask people, do you ever feel tired at the end of the day? You think you have any chronic fatigue? Oh, yeah. And the doctors at the end of the day, they're ready to plotz. They're tired, and you tell them about, things like NT factor, about hydrogenized water. They get all excited because they all suffer from it. It's amazing what you see. I mean,
Well, I tell you,
Dr. Clearfield.
this is a small jar of the NT factor powder, and I do this twice a day. I take, mind you, it's not costing me anything, that I it's coming out of my family budget or anything. And I just take about that much of a teaspoon. Can you see that?
Can you hold it up a little? There you go. Okay.
Yeah. And so lecithin is effectively a gum, so you put it in your mouth, it gets a little bit of water from your saliva. And, but you want to wash it down with water right away. I do that twice a day. And it has a stunning effect. And so I don't like using myself as a,
Well, it's like the person who owns a restaurant but won't eat there, right?
well,
We'll eat
no,
there.
I eat here.
Yeah, we'll eat
You know,
there.
I'm too cheap to buy somebody else's vitamins.
Yeah.
And
And John you mentioned something about allergy, and it seems to be helpful in that regard too.
Yes, it's I find we're at the peak allergy, moment over here in New York, Long Island. And I live out on Long Island on the North Shore, and it's pretty wooded. But we go into these pollen storms. My car is green every morning. And so I would suffer from that pollen, and I suffer from grasses and, It's one of those fancy neighborhoods where they're always cutting their grass. But I find that doing this anti-factor powder twice a day, it has a stunning effect, and my eyes have no, irregular feeling whatsoever. And I experience no allergies, and, I can't explain that, but that's what happens with me. And,
Well, if you
I really like taking the 2 spoons a day.
if you lived in the East Coast your whole life and then transplant out here into Nevada, then you get all sorts of different allergies that you were never exposed to, and it starts all over again. So,
Well, I actually like that part of the country. It's southwest of, California, Reno, Las Vegas, that area of Nevada. I like that. I like the weather there. And
Yeah.
I do well in that weather.
but there's a lot of sagebrush here, and so it was something I wasn't used to or even expecting, and we actually had to use twice the allergy doses than we did back home. So,
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever experienced sagebrush, in my environment much. I don't know if I've ever, experienced that. I've been out to Reno and Las Vegas, but I don't know that I've ever experienced that.
Well, you have to be here a little while, so this is the time of year, of course.
Okay, okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I don't have any in the chat. Anybody have any questions if you want to open up?
Yeah, I have another question to
ahead.
ask John. What about with children? How does your product work with children?
It works great. I mean, Garth has particular interest in children's issues, including autism. So he's used it for many years in that population. I stay away from it because of the just the regulatory environment.
So,
I have a question, Doc.
Please.
Being a Marine who never went to the Gulf
You don't
War,
look like a Marine. You don't have the haircut. Go ahead.
I didn't go to the Gulf War, but I cleaned Gulf War equipment in a reserve unit. And every time we cleaned that equipment, we got headaches and sore throats. So
Wow.
with that being said, I've followed Garth Nicholson for a while. May I ask, what's the difference between your NT factor and his NT factor?
He works with us. He's talking, the product he uses is our product. So where he did the recent work on those veterans, removing the toxicity. I mean, you have this, cohort of veterans from that time that you mentioned, who had exceptional exposure to, in the first Iraq war. They had just, complete exposure that seems to have, gone to their families as well. In any event, we have done some studies with them where we've been able to start moving out, long-held toxicities. Garth could better explain that. Yeah, and we have one, you could take one of the papers, they're one of the more recent ones.
Thank you so much for what you do.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we have a lot of interest in veterans, and Garth and the Iraq veterans, me and the Vietnam veterans, and just the way it is.
Amen.
I was also going to ask you about memory restoration.
Well, I mean, this is, we have good cognitive results from this formula. We're using a lot of phosphoglycolipids, which are, all these cognitive formulas out there. That's a part of it that's working for them. So, you'd have the same results here, if not better. Okay.
Well, I got grandkids in the house. That's why I'm coughing here. You know how that, what that is. Any help from with NT factor for that?
Well, yeah, it would be, and if we're going to send you some samples of healthy curb, I'm probably going to take advantage of it and send you samples of the powder. And I'd suggest, that you use it just like I explained I do myself.
Mhm.
It's not costing you anything. It's, but
Other than, from your website and whatnot, is there any distributed from any of the, distributors?
yeah. Oh, Robert, are you there? Can you? Oh, his thing is muted for some reason. Yeah, we use the distributors. Let me call them again. Whole Scripts, or one of them, Full Scripts.
Full script?
Whole Scripts and
Whole Script.
Zymogen. Yeah, Full Script. What is it, Robert?
Whole script.
Whole Scripts. Okay,
Okay.
okay.
I mean, you said
Uh,
research.
Nutrition. Oh, nutritionals. They're out of Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
They're just a customer of ours, and we make some products for them. But we did we did this product called ATP Fuel that they sell.
okay.
And we
We've
did a
used
study
that.
on that, and we use a really challenging set of patients. People that had long-term exposure to issues that had not been helped, and they, part of the, interviewing, the recruiting the patients was, their status, how long have they been trying to solve their problems.
Mhm.
And it was interesting, Lyme's patients mostly, and that was the focus of their sales.
Mhm.
But it was really a very successful study.
Okay, yeah, we've actually used quite a bit of that. At
The
least
ATP
in
fuel?
our practice, yeah. Mhm. Yeah,
Oh,
we
well,
like
then
that.
you know, You
Well, I
probably
didn't know,
know-
I didn't know you were behind the scenes on that.
Well, on the ATP fuel and then the NT factor energy, I make those for him. Dennis is very close to the vest. He, but we've known each other a very long time.
All right, thank you so much. This was very interesting.
Well, it was my pleasure, really.
And
Thank you.
anybody else have any comments or questions? Can you put a link in the chat, Robert? Or whoever? Can you type in the chat your link to your
Does he know how to do that? I don't know. I wanted to just tell Joel something before I sign off.
Yeah, I'll type in the link to, what do you want, the website?
Well, the
Yes.
research and the website, and
Yeah, no problem.
and he's asking about some of the products, but anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. So we just did this study on patients, and we were using, Garth. The way this moves around the body, it's by bulk action. That's a method of transport that it seems to have. And Garth likes to use these large dosages. So he was using 6 grams a day on this cohort of Iraq veteran patients, and we were able to substantiate the fact that we were removing, long-held chemicals from the body by doing this. And so that's, because he was doing that, I started doing the protocol I showed you before, where I took 2 teaspoons a day. And the first time I took the teaspoon, I took the teaspoon at my house. I left my house. 20 minutes later, while I was sitting in the car at a red light, I was stunned by the invigoration I felt. And, you will probably feel the same thing, Dr. Clearfield. But it was at that large dosage that Garth was able to move these chemicals he felt out of the body. There's no toxicity, but, I'm just sensitive. I'm price sensitive, I mean, it costs people a lot of money, if they gotta do.
you said it releases what do you get like a Herxheimer reaction at all from
No, no.
anything like that?
Well, not negative. And the Herxheimer reaction is, they have sort of a negative response.
Mhm.
But I don't know in the study, Garth supervised these patients himself, and I never discussed that, was he getting, a rebound effect at all from these removal? But I think he's causing it to move out very slowly. And we did discuss that. And I think if you do that, you avoid the Herxheimer effect. And but he didn't talk about that, at least not in any of the conversations with me.
Mhm. Okay.
But
Anybody
I had
else?
but with him doing these large dosages and giving them to customers, patients that, we're providing, I felt the need to start doing this myself. And I was just stunned what an invigoration I had the first dose I took of this.
Mhm.
I've been using this material for many years, but I never took a big dose like that in one shot. And it was a nice experience, I mean, really invigorated, because I was just sitting at the light, waiting for it to change, and I realized how really, really positive I felt.
Mhm.
So on that note, I'll say goodnight and stop
Okay,
my talk.
we have the ntfactor.com and /research and then our fielding. So thank you, Robert, also for being with us. We're here every Tuesday night, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. Next week, we have Dr. Carol McMakin. She's from the frequency specific microcurrent. We had her last year. They do microcurrent therapies, and she's going to be talking about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Any experience with that?
Not that I know of, not that I can think of.
Yeah, and so that it should be an interesting talk. So we'll see you then. Anybody, any questions, comments, complaints? And we'll talk to you again next week, same time, same station. Dr. Casey, please come back.
Please, it's John. I'm not a doctor, so please.
Well,
it's John.
you know what? Todd Bourne sent me a message this morning, said you weren't a doctor. And I said, well, I've demoted you for 2 hours tonight anyway. I've demoted you to doctor. Now you can be elevated to your former status. Okay.
I hope Todd said nice things about us.
He did. So,
Yeah, I like him very much.
yeah, he's a good guy. So we like
Yeah.
him a lot. So, okay.
Okay, great.
Say
Great.
thank you so
All right.
much. Thank you, Robert. Also, don't be a stranger. We're here every week. We've been doing this for more than 2.5 years. Every Tuesday. We're going to be off July 4th is a Tuesday. I'm taking a day off. So we're not going to be
Okay.
here that day.
That's understandable.
So
All right, everybody, have a good night, please.
thank you so much for your time. And
Bye-bye.
we'll be seeing you soon. Okay, good.
Okay, great.